Okay. 1 second. Okay. Okay. Just gotta... Thank you for the welcome back. Alright. I'm back. Hello. Sorry about that. Twix wanted to bark. Anyway, last time we continued our wonderful journey through... Are you echoing or is it just me? I might be echoing. Am I echoing? Are you sure? Never mind. Okay. Okay. So last time... Hello. Last time we read the next 50 or so pages of Prince Caspian. That was on Monday. We learned more about the part of the journey of Prince Caspian himself as he left his home. And the dwarf, whose name escapes me right now because it was an unusual name for me. Trumpkin, of course. He had a window open for when I was trying to stream it. Gotcha. The dwarf Trumpkin popped in and said, "Hey, let's do a contest to see how good yous kids is." And sure enough, the kids showed him what's what and showed him how good they were at their respective crafts and abilities. I don't listen to the music beforehand, so I don't know what plays, so it always catches me off guard. So now I think they're going to go meet. It's a misnomer. That's just a giant misnomer is just my username right there. So now they're heading to meet everybody else at Oh man, I forgot what it's called. Man, I'm just good at memory today right now. I forgot where they were meeting everybody. Oh well, they'll mention it again. It's fine. Whatever. It's cool. But without further ado, let's get to reading, huh? Pardon my slurp. That was gross. It's true. I have no facial hair right now. And hey, Cass, thanks for coming out. Chapter the 9th. What Lucy Saw. After my great summary. Susan and the two boys were bitterly tired with rowing before they rounded up the last headland and began the final pull-up to Glass Water itself. And Lucy's... I hope my voice is okay. Let me know if the volume's okay for everybody. And also, I'll be a bit delayed in replying because I'll be reading. And drinking. Drinking heavily. Alright. Your voice is out. Well, that's good. I'm glad that... I'm more so concerned about the volume than I am about how my voice sounds. Class went itself, and Lucy's head ached from the long hours of sun and the glare on the water. Even Trumpkin longed for the voyage to be over. The seat on which he sat to steer had been made for men, not dwarfs, and his feet did not reach the floorboards. And everyone knows how uncomfortable that is, even for 10 minutes. And as they all grew more tired, their spirits fell. Up till now, the children had only been thinking of how to get to Caspian. Now they wondered what they would do when they found him, and how a handful of dwarfs and woodland creatures could defeat an army of grown-up humans. Twilight was coming on as they rolled slowly up the windings of Glasswater Creek, a twilight which deepened as the banks drew closer together and the overhanging trees began almost to meet overhead. It was very quiet in here as the sound of the sea died away behind them. They could even hear the trickle of the little streams that poured down from the forest in the Glasswater. They went ashore at last, far too tired to attempt lighting a fire, and even a supper of apples, though most of them felt they never wanted to see an apple again, seemed better than trying to catch or shoot anything. After a little silent munching, they all huddled down together in moss and dead leaves between the 4 large beech trees. Everyone except Lucy went to sleep at once. Lucy, being far less tired, found it hard to get comfortable. Also, she had forgotten till now that all dwarfs snore. She knew that one of the best ways of getting to sleep is to stop trying, so she opened her eyes. Through a gap in the bracken and branches, she could see just a patch of water in the creek and the sky above it. Then, with a thrill of memory, she saw again, after all these years, the bright Narnian stars. She had once known them better than the stars of her own world, because as a queen in Narnia, she had gone to bed much later than as a child in England. And there were at least 3 of the summer constellations could be seen from where she lay. The ship, the hammer, and the leopard. Dear old leopard, she murmured happily to herself. Instead of getting drowsier, she was getting more awake, with an odd nighttime dreamish kind of wakefulness. The creek was growing brighter. She knew now that the moon was on it, though she couldn't see the moon. And now she began to feel that the whole forest was coming awake like herself. Hardly knowing why she did it, she got up quickly and walked a little distance away from their bivouac. I don't know how to say that word. Bivouac? Bivouac? I don't know. Pretend I said it right. This is lovely, said Lucy to herself. It was cool and fresh. Delicious smells were floating everywhere. Somewhere close by, she heard the twitter of a nightingale beginning to sing, then stopping, then beginning again. It was a little lighter ahead. She went toward the light and came to a place where there were fewer trees and whole patches or pools of moonlight, but the moonlight and shadows so mixed that you could hardly be sure where anything was or what it was. At the same moment, the nightingale, satisfied at last with his tuning up, burst into full song. Lucy's eyes began to grow accustomed to the light, and she saw the trees that were nearest her more distinctly. A great longing for the old days when the trees could talk in Narnia. Came over her. She knew exactly how each of these trees would talk, if only she could wake them, and what sort of human form it would put on. She looked at a silver birch. It would have had a soft, showery voice, and would look like a slender girl, with hair blown all about her face, and fond of dancing. She looked at Oak. He would be a wizened but hearty old man with a frizzled beard, and warts on his face and hands, and hair growing out of the warts. She looked at the beech under which she was standing. Ah, she would be the best of all. She would be a gracious goddess, smooth and stately, and the lady of the wood. Oh, trees, 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 said Lucy, though she had not been intending to speak at all. Oh, trees, please wake. Don't you remember it? Don't you remember me? Dryads and hamadryads? Come out to me. Though there was not a breath of wind, they all stirred about her. The rustling noise of the leaves was almost like words. The nightingale stopped singing as if to listen to it. Lucy felt that at any moment she would begin to understand what the trees were trying to say, but the moment did not come. The rustling died away. The nightingale resumed its song. Even in the moonlight, the wood looked more ordinary again. Yet Lucy had the feeling, as you sometimes have when you're trying to remember a name or a date, and almost get it, but it vanishes before you really do, that she had just missed something, as if she had spoken to the trees a split second too soon or a split second too late, or used all the right words, except one, or put in one word that was just wrong. Quite suddenly she began to feel tired. She went back to the bivouac, knick-knack, paddywhack, snuggled down between Susan and Peter and was asleep in a few minutes. It was cold. It was a cold and cheerless waking for them all the next morning, with a gray twilight in the wood, for the sun had not yet risen, and everything damp and dirty. "Apples, hi-ho!" said Trumpkin with a rueful grin. "I must say, you ancient kings and queens don't overfeed your courtiers." They stood up and shook themselves and looked about. The trees were thick with what could, and they could see no more than a few yards in any direction. "I suppose your majesties know the way, all right," said the dwarf. "I don't," said Susan. "I've never seen these woods in my life before. In fact, I thought all along that we ought to have gone by the river." "Then I think you might have said so at the time," answered Peter with pardonable sharpness. "Oh, don't take any notice of her," said Edmund. "She's always a wet blanket. You've got the pocket compass of yours, Peter, haven't you? Well, then, we're as right as rain. We've only got to keep on going northwest, across the little river, what do you call it? The Rush?" "I know," said Peter, "the one that joins the big river at the fords of Baruna, or Baruna's Bridge, as the DLF calls it. That's right, cross it and strike uphill, and we'll be at the stone table. Aslan's How, I mean. By 8 or 9 o'clock. I hope King Caspian will give us a good breakfast." "I hope you're right," said Susan. "I can't remember all that at all." That's the worst of girls," said Edmund to Peter and the dwarf. "They never carry a map in their heads." "That's because our heads have something inside them," said Lucy. "Oh, sick bird." At first, things seemed to be going pretty well. They even thought that they had struck an old path. But if you know anything about woods, you will know that one is always finding imaginary paths. They disappear after about 5 minutes, and then you think you have found another, and hope it is not another, but more of the same one, and it also disappears, and after you have been well lured out of the right direction, you realize that none of them were paths at all. The boys and the dwarf, however, were used to the woods, and were not taken in for more than a few seconds. They had plodded on for about half an hour, 3 of them very stiff from yesterday's rowing, when Trumpkin suddenly whispered, "Stop." They all stopped. "There's something following us," he said in a low voice, "or rather, something keeping up with us, over there, on the left." They all stood still, listening and staring, until their ears and eyes ached. "You and I had better each have an arrow on the string," said Susan to Trumpkin. The dwarf nodded, and when both bows were ready for action, the party went out again. They went a few dozen yards through fairly open woodland, keeping a sharp lookout. Then they came to a place where the undergrowth thickened, and they had to pass nearer to it. Just as they were passing the place, they came to a sudden something that snarled and flashed, rising out from the breaking twigs like a thunderbolt. Lucy was knocked down and winded, hearing the twang of a bowstring as she fell. When she was able to take notice of things again, she saw a great, grim-looking gray bear lying dead with Trumpkin's arrow inside. "The DLF beat you in that shooting match, Sue," said Peter, with a slightly forced smile. Even he had been shaken by this adventure. I left it too late," said Susan in an embarrassed voice.